Before I met this morning's guest 3 years ago, her life was in the pits. Now you'll meet her this morning, coming up next on Carolina People. Good morning. Welcome to Carolina People. This morning we're at the Myrtle Beach Marriott Resort at Grand Dunes. We're focused on last Thursday's featured speaker at the 67th annual meeting of the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. Southern humorist and columnist and author Ronda Rich. Good morning, Ronda.
And one of your favorite people, Kel.
Oh, and absolutely one of my favorite people until last week's column came. No, I'm kidding. And you were great last Thursday. Unbelievable. What a following. You had a standing ovation.
I have a following because of you.
Well, no.
And I did tell that when I spoke to them last week at the Chamber, that when I started my column, I now have 53 newspapers, but you were one of the first dozen newspapers that stepped up.
Is that right?
Absolutely.
Well, I will never forget.
You are a visionary.
Yeah. No, I will never forget that day. It was great. Mary Edie's the visionary.
Exactly.
You and I would like to think we're visionaries. It's Mary Edie, literally. I mean, think about it.
Exactly.
She brought you in. I hadn't even owned the Herald for a year.
Yeah, not long.
We're in the conference room there at the Herald, the nice, great facility out on the former Air Force Base, and there you are. And I thought, column, my Lord, I just want to meet this woman. I'll do anything, sure.
You know, I think that you were one of the top 5 easiest sales I ever had.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, because I said to you, well, I have this column. It was a new idea that I was doing. And you went, how much? I said, and you said, all right, when can we start? Can we start next week?
That's right.
Yeah.
I think we did.
Yeah.
I think we did.
I've had 2 or 3 publishers call me up and say, I want it, and that's the easiest.
Right.
But as far, so many people take so long to make a decision.
Oh, yeah.
I usually say it takes about a year to get a newspaper. You know, just going through the decision making, and they find the budget and they find the space and all of that. But
even in community newspapers, obviously you're in a lot of weeklies and dailies.
Yes, and you know, when I designed Dixie Divas, it was for weekly newspapers because I thought that, you know, the weekly newspapers serve that core newspaper community.
Right, sure.
And I felt like that they needed some really good journalism, that it was something that someone who was a nationally best-selling author who had a platform to speak about the South, that it would work. So I really designed it for weekly newspapers, and my first 3 newspapers were weeklies, and then the 4th and 5th were dailies, and then after that I have as many dailies and maybe more dailies than I have weeklies.
Is that right?
At that point.
Of course, you've got a lot of experience with newspapers.
Exactly, started in newspaper.
And I think later I saw, even towards the end of your newspaper career, had a large stint at USA Today. Right?
Yeah, I had not a long stint, but a short stint. I was called up, but when USA Today started, I was working for a Gannett-owned paper called The Times in Gainesville, Georgia. And Gannett always said that they scoured all of their newspapers to find the best and the brightest. And I had won some sports writing awards, and I got called up on a Saturday night. I'd been to cover a Georgia-Auburn football game, came back to the newspaper, and they said they want you in Washington on Monday. But my forte then was covering NASCAR racing. It was just becoming a very hot sport. It was a great sport for USA Today to cover because it was a fledgling paper. You know, it's such a powerhouse now. It's hard to remember back when that was a huge step.
This would be in the late 80s, early 90s.
Mid-80s.
Right.
And to take, this would probably been like 87, to take news stories and make it very concise and put a lot of color there.
Oh, yeah.
Because nobody was doing much color. You didn't
black and white. We think of newspapers black and white, sure.
Yeah, and that was just such a step forward for them. Well, the American auto industry was really supporting USA Today. It was buying these huge full-page ads.
Right.
And they wanted to give back to the auto industry, so they covered NASCAR. Because the theory was, win on Sunday, sell on Monday. So if Ford won on Sunday, they sold on Monday.
And did the theory work?
It worked. It worked.
Right?
I don't know that it still works like that because now everything's more divided into your favorite driver. But then you were either a Chevy man or a Ford man, and then Pontiac came into the blend, and then Dodge, and now Toyota's there. But it very much was a shootout between Chevrolet and Ford for many, many years.
Wow, Ronda. It was fascinating getting ready, just getting ready to see you last Thursday here at the Marriott at the Chamber's presentation to see about, reading a little bit about you and to see that you are speaking, looks like more than 100 times a year.
Yeah.
Are you just gone all the time?
Oh, right. You know, when I did the event in Myrtle Beach last week, I flew in the night before, in the middle of the night from New Orleans.
Right.
I had done an event there, and the day before that had been in Meridian, Mississippi. So, yeah, I stay on the road throughout the Southeast. It's a very busy time, and I love it. I'm just so blessed. So blessed.
Had you thought about writing from an early age, Rhonda? You've always, really? It's
always. I grew up loving books. Yeah. And the story is, I was born when my parents, later in life to them, they had 3 kids that were grown, and they put my mom to bed to rest as much as she could. And I had an older sister who was a freshman in college. They had just bought a set of encyclopedias for her. So my mom went to bed and started reading the encyclopedias while she was pregnant with me. And I came out of the womb literally loving books. I mean, when I was 4 years old, I won reading awards at the library.
Oh, come on. Age 4?
Age 4.
Rhonda.
I was fascinated by stories. I would come home from Sunday school on Sundays and retell the Sunday school lessons. Storytelling fascinated me. When I was 6 years old, I would pack the family suitcase and go to New York on book business. I mean, I just knew all my life that I wanted to write books.
At
always.
Age 6.
At age 6.
Yeah. Do you have a vivid memory of stuff like that, Rhonda?
Yes.
I mean, can you really think back? Not to date you, but that's a few years ago.
Exactly. No, I do. I remember all of that stuff, and I think that's a mark of a storyteller. You have to remember the details, and I see details that other people who don't tell stories well or are not interested in telling stories, they don't see. And I see details in the simplest of things that bring a story alive and that's vivid in that storytelling.
Do those details stick out in your mind, or do you write them down when you see them so you don't forget them later?
I have a good memory. My sister always says I have a photographic memory, and I do not. I don't. But I have a good memory because I pay attention. And I think that having a good memory goes to really paying attention, listening, and watching. And if you do, it's kind of like taking a snapshot. You remember it.
Some of those great words you talked about last Thursday, oftentimes a great story will find you.
Exactly.
Will find you, and you regale and talked about a couple of great instances of that. One you didn't talk about, I don't think, last week was when I saw on your website, whatsouthernwomenknow.com, which was a dishwasher going out. Just the you could actually turn a dishwasher going out or going on the blink into an entire column, a weekly column or a daily column.
Yeah, I mean, it's so simple. It's like one day, a couple of friends were spending the night with me, a friend and her husband, and he was up before us, and I come out of my bedroom at 7, and he's looking out my window on my front porch, and he's going, "Come here," and I go over there, and there's a possum. It's 7 o'clock in the morning on my front porch, and possums are nocturnal animals, so if you see them, you know they're harmed, something's wrong. And it became a great story for me because something had bitten off half of the possum's tail, and I had to rescue it and take it back into the woods, and wrote a column about it. And then a producer for the biggest television show in London called me up and said, "We'd like to come to America and film you and your friend Stevie rescuing possums."
Oh, come on.
And I went, "Right, you're joking, right?"
Yeah,
He said, "No, we think it'd be a most enchanting story. We think our readers would love it." And I went, "Well, you know, we don't rescue possums every day, just when we find them and they need some."
That is great.
So it's very funny when someone across the pond in London can find one of your stories and wants to do a story on it.
Southern humorist. Obviously, you've been out and about all over, not only the Southeast, but all over the country.
Right.
Even potentially all over the world.
Yeah, exactly. You know, Kansas City is a good market for me. I go into Kansas City and do a lot of speaking engagements. Just did a big event at Disneyland in L.A. 1,500 women.
No.
And it was a standing ovation. You go into a place like that, and you don't know now, are they going to get us? Are they going to understand Southerners? But Jeff Foxworthy taught me this, that very often if it's funny to us, it's funny to everybody else.
Right.
You know, we may put a Southern twist on it, but, you know, if we find something that people connect with, like I tell a lot of mama stories.
Right,
and women connect to mothers. Everybody's got a mother, and everybody understands being beleaguered by their mother and all of that. But if it's funny to us, it's going to be funny in California and New York and Cincinnati.
Have you found that as your column? Have you looked at papers in parts outside of the Southeast or otherwise?
You know, I haven't, because there's still so much potential in the South where I haven't gone. And it makes sense to sell it here first, but I might eventually do that.
Yeah, I mean, based off of what Jeff Foxworthy had shared with you, and the idea you've obviously picked up there in Los Angeles and Kansas City and other places, I'm sure it can do very well.
Yes, exactly.
And the column of your, the title of your column, Dixie Divas.
Right.
How'd you come up with that? Just thinking...
well, I love the fact that I wanted to pay homage to the South. And the Dixie Chicks had come along, and they had proven that Dixie wasn't politically incorrect, that you didn't offend people with that. And I've always loved Dixie, you know, and I wanted to say this is truly Southern, you know. So that was that. And then, you know, just to find something that played in, I like the DD, so it became Dixie Divas. I own the trademark on that. And it took 3 years going through all the process of getting it and all of that. But
did Dixie Do come before Dixie Divas or the other way around?
Dixie Do was right. Dixie Do is my dachshund.
Yes, right.
And let me tell you, her name came from this. The Atlanta Journal newspaper was the afternoon paper in Atlanta, and it was always the bigger of the newspapers for many years, and then the Atlanta Constitution, which was a morning paper, became bigger. And the Atlanta Journal had this great slogan they ran across their masthead, and it said, "Covers Dixie like the deed."
Oh, great.
And I love that. So about 10 years ago, they folded the Journal into the Constitution. And on the day that they ran the last Atlanta Journal, I pulled that front page and saved it. And when I got Dixie Do, I was getting her as a puppy. I had already knew she was coming as a gift from my best girlfriend. I was looking for a name, and I ran across that paper, and I went Dixie Do.
Right then.
And it's so funny because I can go to places. I was in St. Simons, Georgia not long ago, and I went to church. I was there to do an event, and I went to church that morning. And people were coming up introducing themselves, and they recognized me because I run in the Brunswick, Georgia paper. And this lady came over, and she said, "What I really want to know is how's Dixie Do?"
Oh, come on.
Yeah, so Dixie Do has her own following.
Well, we want to talk a little bit about whether we get it today. Hopefully you'll come back to be with us tomorrow.
Yes.
Rhonda, Claudette, Mary Grace, not only Dixie Do, but of course your mother.
Yes.
And a lot of folks want to get updates on them. Folks who read your weekly column here in the Myrtle Beach Herald, but for folks who see it all over the place, wherever they're from, or folks who visit the Myrtle Beach area may know it from their home in Gainesville or their home in Atlanta or otherwise. But
and they can read it online with you.
That's exactly right. Folks can go online to myrtlebeachherald.com. Speaking of that, there are a lot of those great pieces. I went online early this morning just to print off last week's column, the column from last Thursday, which of course had some interesting stuff about dating younger men, Rhonda, which is very exciting. Of course, this is I'm just going to quote you real quick. Not even Dee Dee, the young woman there that you were going back and forth, a friend of yours.
This is when I started to shift in my seat.
Not even the Dee Dee expected me to move so quickly, but for a few years there's been a flirtation in my life with a handsome, sweet guy with abs that are rock hard and deep-cut muscles. I know we're not talking about anyone in this room. He's had a crush on me, and while I saw him occasionally in a casual way, I didn't, quote, date him because he's, well, too young. 10 years too young, or he was. That's all changed now. That's the big word now. We want to hear about this guy. You called him up.
Funny.
You want to date. Now, this is a fiction. I love it. Want to date, I asked, then explained the new no one over 40. No one over 40 need apply rule. He laughed delightedly. I love this one last sentence. He laughed delightedly, and in less time than it takes to mascara, coat, one eyelash, he explained, "Baby, I'm there." When? I'm there. I'm moving. I'm coming quick. Now, I want to hear about this guy, and of course, some of your other great, I'll give you a second, too, I think about that.
No, you don't have
Who's the lucky one, sitting up with the dead, crazy runs proud through the South?
Yes.
Folks can go online to myrtlebeachherald.com and see some of the tremendous columns all the way back here to May 10th of this year. But, of course, you've been with us online for 2 or 3 years now.
Yeah, I can't remember how long it's been.
It has been. Thank you for letting us do that.